Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Admin Bar. I am your co-host, Kyle Van Duzen, along with my other co-host, Matt Siebert. How's it going today, Matt?
Doing all right. Not no complaints.
Awesome. And today you can see, if you're watching along in the live stream, you can see we have a special guest with us today. So we are going to be talking all things design. So who better to bring on than Piccia? Hello, Piccia. How are you doing this morning?
Hello, I'm doing very, very well. It's afternoon here.
Yeah, I keep doing that.
Yes,
So
very good. Yes.
I got 9:32 in the AM, so my day's just starting and your day is about wrapping up.
33, yes.
That's
In the
awesome.
PM. In the PM, yes.
Well, was it a good day? Do I have good things to look forward to today since you're living in the future?
Definitely. It was a sunny, bright day full of blue skies and blue hope.
Perfect.
I just park it there.
That's what I'm
Ask for
hoping
more.
for.
I just park it there. I just leave it there.
Awesome. Well, for everybody who hasn't been following you around, why don't you give a little introduction of yourself and some of your background so everybody can kind of get to know you?
Yes, my name is Piccia Neri. I am Italian, now living in Spain after a long time in London, my beloved London. And I am a graphic designer, although I became one. So if anyone, because a lot of us people working on the web have imposter syndrome, I'm the queen because I was actually an art historian. I was trained as an art historian, started doing graphic design in book design, and then throughout the years became like a proper graphic designer after through many years of working in London, both as a freelance with my own projects and with big agencies, or even at times having jobs. Like I was the creative director at the British Film Institute for a while, which was fun. And now a few years ago I started working on the web, which I am fascinated by, and started working with WordPress specifically, although as we all know, WordPress is a tool that we use, but anyway, we love it in general. And in the past year or so, I've specifically been concentrating on design on the web, and especially sort of bridging the gap between designers and developers in two ways. So there's designers like me who need to learn about the web, because design on the web is not, I mean, design principles can be the same, but actually designing for the web has different sets of challenges, and developers who do need to understand about design. So that's what I've been doing with a project that's called Design for Geeks. And that's how a lot of people know me about now, because I've been talking at work camps on this kind of subject. So it was long-winded. Sorry.
No, it's perfect. You're like the design developer whisperer. You like have the secret language they can both understand.
I hope so. That's my mission, bridging the gap.
Well, I think that's perfect for today's conversation, and kind of one thing that I really want this whole conversation to encompass is I think there's a big misconception over what the word design really means, who is a designer and who's not a designer. You mentioned, in your background, studying art history. Now, me and you kind of do the same thing for a living. We make websites. So our job titles are similar. I came from a print background and did a lot of that kind of design. You've done that design, Matt, too. But there's nothing that would bore me more than art history. And you love art history, so you can come at these things from many different many different angles and kind of arrive in the same place, So I think when you hear the word design or website design, you think of the visual aesthetic, you think of the fonts and the colors and the layout and the style and all that. But that's not really exactly what the word design means, because there's plenty of things that are designed or designers, come up with plans for. That's really what design is. So how would you define the word design?
Well, the word design is actually means planning or finding solutions. Basically, it's problem solving. So that's why it's really interesting how, as a word, I am really interested by it, because there is no actual, the only equivalent in Italian actually means, you would translate as creating a project. And that would mean, but that would apply to any discipline. It doesn't, you know, it could be graphic, anything, could be anything. And that's the crux of it, I think, that really, that people think that design is styling, and that's not. Styling is styling. Design is planning. It's just, it's the whole phase that comes before you do the styling, which in my opinion is less than 50% of the process, really. So this is one of the things that I'm talking about, which because personally I think that developers are designers. They don't use, you know. Also, there's often a misconception that design means visual design, and that you need to be artistic to be a designer or to even tackle website design. And I beg to differ, because that's not, you could really design amazing websites and have not an ounce of artistic sense or vision in you. That's not what it's about. You know, I personally, I don't think so. To me, it is finding solutions and planning and problem solving first and foremost.
Yeah, and you know, like if you asked me to get a pencil and a paper and draw you something, you would laugh very hard at it, because I have not hardly that type of artistic bone in my body, you know. But I've been a graphic designer for 15 years, so it took me like a while to kind of figure out that can be okay and that can work, you know. I kind of always felt like an imposter because I'm not an artist, but I'm a designer, you know. So you can be, you know, you can not be one of those things and be one of the others. So, you know, Matt, me and you kind of have a similar background, but you do illustrations and stuff. So how do you kind of explain the word design?
I think planning is definitely a big part of it. Like, clients definitely hyper focus on the visual because it's the easiest and most accessible to them, I think. So I think, you know, you've got design, and when people talk about it, they talk about the visual aesthetics because it's the most accessible piece of the puzzle. I think, like, from when I was younger, I did take like classical art classes. I did oils and pastels privately for many years, you know, just for fun, because my family has that artistic knack. Like my grandfather, like everybody does some sort of artwork. But as far as like designing, or like the word design, I think that it has so many different variables to it, and yeah, it's a tough question, which is why we have our guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So when me and Matt were kind of discussing what all we would cover in this topic, I actually had this perfect example in mind of something it's totally designed. It almost like encompasses design in my head, even though it's kind of a really random thing. So I called Matt and was about to tell him about it. And when I told him what it was, he's like, "Man, you got to be kidding me. I was just holding one of these in my hand so I could remember to tell you." And so this is a weird example, but follow me here. So I've thought this many times, I think, sitting on the couch doing nothing. But your remote control for your TV is like a marvelous piece of design because it has a function that you need. All the buttons can be laid out in different ways, different shapes, different sizes. You know, they feel different, but you need to be able to use a remote to point it at the TV, not look at the remote, but know what buttons you're hitting. So you get a nice remote from, you know, a big name brand, and you can learn how to use that in seconds. And almost feel completely comfortable with it. And then you go to the discount store and buy one of those like all-in-one remotes, and all the buttons are the same size and in just like a perfect grid, and it's just useless. You'll never learn how to use that. So what do you think of that analogy there?
I think it's a perfect analogy. I hadn't thought of it, but it's really, really good. And I'm always looking for analogies. So this is a very good one. It's important. Yes. Because then some remotes are nicer than others, so then you have a different experience with them but basically, yes, you hit the nail on the head. It's a really good definition, and it's really what interests me. One of the things that I talk about as one of the ways of bridging the gap between designers and developers is design thinking, which is actually, it's a thing, it's a process. It is a little bit, I don't know if I can say the word, I'll find another word. It's a little bit, because the word that comes has a sort of swear word in it, so I shouldn't.
That's fine. You're fine.
We're at a bar.
It's a little bit wanky.
Oh, see, that's fine. You could have gone way worse.
It's a little bit wanky. Okay, fine. So it's a little bit wanky because, well, Facebook is for over 13-year-olds, so that's
Right.
fine. But because it's basically design thinking is a process, and it's all about, it's based on putting the user at the center of the design process. And it's about empathy, and it's about testing, iterating, trying things out. So, which is something that I like, because also with clients, what I like to do is say, okay, you don't have the money for a big project right now. Well, let's do it like this. Let's iterate it. Let's do it in chunks. So in this way, so the design thinking process can be used, can be applied to any project, absolutely anything at all, because it's based on putting yourself in the shoes of your users, asking them what they want, or testing it out, testing out the solution, and then going back to it as in when you need, if you need to change things, which is typically what happens on a website, because all of us, especially people who do funnels, will always do a funnel and then test out or do A/B testing and so on, and then you go back and you tweak things if that button doesn't work, and so on. But I'm saying that it's a little bit wanky because it's like a California, there's a Californian agency called IDEO, and that's where it comes from. And if you do a search for design thinking, you will see a lot of people also that say, oh, design thinking is bullshit. So I always, I think, so just because it goes, sometimes it's a little bit too inclusive in a very Californian way. So you do get to the point where so many people are involved that actually the designers can't do their job properly, because there is a job that you have as a designer, which is solving the problem, and the client may know what the problem is, but they won't know how to solve it. So it's necessary to sort of make distinction, but it's a really interesting process to look at that I think can unite all of us who are here to solve a problem. And that definitely applies to designers, visual designers, as well as developers. We can't work without one another, basically.
Yeah, and a lot of us kind of end up doing both of those things, especially people like me or Matt, that it's just us and our company. You're doing all of them. But I think me and Matt have had conversations like along this line. But me and him both came from, and you too, where we were doing print stuff for so long. And I think that's one of the things that's so attracted me to doing web stuff, because you can test out things and measure results and go back and tweak things instantly. It's not start over with a whole new print run and this is going to cost you log in and change it.
Oh, the horror. I mean, it was wonderful to hold something in your hands and to get the physicality of it, but at the same time, when if you've ever made a spelling mistake on a hardback cover bound in canvas bound hardback cover, you don't want to be there when that happens, really.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of us may have had that happen at least early in our careers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So is that kind of one of the things you enjoy about the transition you've made, Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. Just the fluidity of it too. Being able to measure what your creation is doing, what it can do, and be able to fine tune it as it after it's live is really what draws me to it. I mean, it's so much fun. You get a live, basically, like, representation of your hard work, and you're able to go back and keep making it better, which is that's like so much fun to me.
Yeah, and also because it really brings immediate results in a way that was much more difficult to measure with print publications, because some print publications actually have no particular consequence. They just exist. And also I kind of think that now I think print design was so easy in comparison. I didn't really need, I needed to be up to date with things, and yes, I would. And of course, then you still, keep studying and keeping yourself inspired. And, but really this is, we need to know so much more, because we need to know a little bit of everything to really be able to serve our clients, even to just say, no, you need an SEO expert for that. But you do need to know enough about SEO to be able to even tell them what they, so I think that it's sometimes I look back with sort of a little bit of nostalgia, because it was easier. And also I find, please, I would like to know your opinion on this. I do find that sometimes I miss, because I am a geek, I love it. I love the geeky aspect of it, but I miss the creative bit, because I mean what I say when I say I don't think you need to be creative to be a good web designer. But conversely, I really miss it. And I haven't come across yet. I mean, it happened a couple of times where you're specifically asked to come up with a visual concept for a website, because maybe it's a marketing campaign for a big company. It happened to be a couple of years ago. So that's more what I was used to be doing, and I loved it because I did a lot of posters. And then when I was doing the film posters, there was so much creativity involved. So I do miss that a little bit. How do you feel? Do you feel like you had more of that when you were print designers?
Yeah,
I'm not entirely. I don't think so. Not for me, at least. I take the different sections of a site from the hero image down, and each one I focus on. So if we're talking design, you've got the initial layout. You've got the roadmap, and at that point, what pages are going to be connecting where you want to try to drive users. Like, you've got that design taken care of, and then you start the aesthetics. And I mean, my style is very minimal. It's very sparse, lots of not like white space, but it's I mean, you can see it here in the admin bar. Kyle's design sense and mine are, yeah, it's very similar, and it's kind of utilitarian, but it still looks pretty. Yeah. And I focus on each section of a site after you have that roadmap, almost as pieces of print collateral. So each section I tackle as a separate piece. Like, would this look good if I was to print it out, cut it out, and just show this one section? Would it stand on its own? And then you take that, once they all stand on their own, now do they work together? And at the end of it, you have a fully functional website that also has the aesthetic appeal of not necessarily print marketing, but it kind of blends in a little bit there. Kyle?
Yeah, I'm fairly with you on that. I don't know that I ever thought about it like exactly that way, but where I worked in the print industry, I wasn't doing a whole lot of fun stuff. So most of the time was in a sign shop. So we were making signs. So we were taking companies' logos and putting them on their building, or, caution, wet floor. So there wasn't a ton of creativity all the time. Now, we did have projects where, we could get a little bit more creative, but, I can still do that on my own projects, so that doesn't bother me a whole lot. But I'm not super artsy either, so I think you seem more artsy than I do, and you studied art history, and that's more in your DNA than it is mine. I've always done this as like I've always done this with the goal in mind that we're like solving a problem for the customer, whether that's in print or in web. So I've never done this as more of the art side of it. I did see a question here. Todd asked, how do you let or consider content and copy for your design? So that's kind of going on what Matt says. I'll say what I kind of think, and let you both give your opinion. So it kind of goes back to that whole problem solving thing. So you can have kind of going on what Matt says. You're all good. So you can have that you're still trying to solve a problem. So, if you boil the definition back down on design, you're still trying to solve a problem. So when you get copy from a customer, you have to use kind of the knowledge you have on how do I structure this to make sense, to drive traffic the right way, or make this easy to comprehend? And also, how do I lay this content out visually that it's going to be appealing enough for somebody to read it. So you're kind of putting together this puzzle again with their content. So at times I'll ask them to revise copy for multiple reasons. So one might be the words aren't very good and we need to work on that a little bit. But sometimes it's just, this doesn't fit the space well, and I think we should break this up a little bit differently. And there's times that, we've changed the content completely because it didn't fit well in the visual aspect of it, so you don't want to dilute the message. You don't want to dilute the message for the look, but you also don't want to kill the look for the message, so there's a balancing act in there. At least, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, actually, I had a client yesterday. I'm doing I work with a nonprofit very local to me, and I have for, I want to say like 5 or 6 years now. I was there in the beginning. Like, we work really well together. Like, she trusts me, I trust her. She's got a couple of nonprofit coaches as well. And I wish I could remember the name of this coach, because she's just absolutely awesome when it comes to both copy and layout. So we're developing some print collateral for her, and it's the end of the year plea letter. So she's sending this out, and it's basically asking for donations. And this year it's a front and a back page. All the years previous, the story has been a little bit smaller, so it all fit on one page. And the way that we structured it, I mean, granted this is print, but it still, stands to reason that it works in web as well. But the story started with the introduction of a new horse. They rescue draft horses, and what that particular horse's story was, and that, from arriving at the barn to getting healthy and learning to trust again and all of that, the way that it was sent to me, it broke the story up between the 2 pages, and it didn't have like the flow that it could have had, where on one page what it is now is the whole story, and then the ask is on the backside. So it ends with the call to action. It starts with one as well, but it doesn't break up that story, and at the end of the story, the copy was really well written, so it almost leaves like a cliffhanger, so you have to turn the page over. You
have to turn the page, which is actually a copywriting technique. So right. I was trying to remember who I was having this conversation with, or whether it was a video. I wish I could remember, but there was a very important point being made, saying that copy is design, and that's why I really do not like designing to dummy copy, because it's not the same. Because even words that have different meanings, I would lay them out in a different way. I would use different weights. I would use different colors. Well, colors are a different story, but anyway. So you need, design is also copy. Yes, it was me actually. I just
You're so brilliant.
Oh my god, this is hilarious. That's in the typography webinars that I was doing, because I've got a webinar course that I did, and it's all live. So that's why it was all done live, and it's there's 2 lessons on typography. I think it was the first one, the one that's free, where I say you need to consider typography as part of the layout. Type is part of the layout, and it's part of the meaning. So you need, that's where it was. But it's what you're saying, basically. So that's what design is. It's not just because it looks prettier. It's just because you want people to do that, and you need them to turn over. So you need to create a cliffhanger so that they will turn over and see the call to action and be so moved by the story that they donate or whatever. And so that's what design is. Notice that we don't know anything about how you styled it. It's irrelevant.
Right.
That's not, so here, proving again the point where design isn't the styling. Really.
And it kind of reminds me of a quote that I heard years ago, and it will always make sense, and that's that bad design is very noticeable and good design is invisible. And that's Absolutely. The way that it should be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always mention Apple, which is a company that, by the way, I don't like so much anymore, but it has to be said that their design, it's just the epitome. In fact, they got to a point where they were sort of almost making things disappear. You don't even, it's so minimal and simple that there's nothing on it. I mean, this one, they went through, the white face when you had nothing there, just absolutely nothing.
Or like, look at their packaging. It's a very simplistic white box. It's got the product shot on the back. It has a few like relevant specs, but that's it. And you take that in comparison with anything that Microsoft puts out, and it's got.
You haven't thrown
there you
it
go,
yet.
Exactly. And if you look at like Microsoft or Nvidia or like literally any other computer type stuff, like they've got banners and they've got starbursts and like just information overload and all of this stuff. And if you look at it all together on a shelf, like Apple stands out. They're the ones that you're like, wow, that's really pretty. And
it's kind of like that principle. You keep taking stuff away until the design falls apart.
Right.
So sometimes you can take a lot of stuff away before that happens. You want to, and I think this is a tendency for people who maybe haven't spent a lot of time actually doing the styling part of design. They want to add all the bells and whistles to kind of make up for not having any of that theory knowledge. So
Exactly.
instead of realizing this is going to look a whole lot better with a bunch of negative space and straight to the point, they want to add shadows and highlights and gradients and all this stuff to try to like really highlight those points, and that's counterproductive.
And not only would it not look better, but it wouldn't function nearly as well either, because with all of that distraction, if you land on a page and the hero is just everything everywhere, you're not gonna, as a user, you're not really going to take any of that in, like not 100%. You might get an idea of everything, but if you only have the one call to action, the one message, and leave it at that, it's a lot easier to then guide somebody in the direction that you want to guide them to. There's no distraction.
Yeah. Now I want to get to a couple things here with you while we have you on here, and I know this is good for a lot of the audience that we have, as well as kind of your work with working with developers and designers and getting them to talk back and forth. So, you can have something that's very beautiful and doesn't function very well, and you can have something that's not very beautiful but functions great. And in web, you probably prefer to go with the thing that functions really well. So you don't have to have like a whole lot of artistic ability, like you were saying, to be able to be a web designer. So the example I thought of was Wikipedia. Visually looking at a Wikipedia page, it's about as ugly as you can get. I mean, it is just an encyclopedia. It's just text with a couple pictures. There's not a whole lot of
brutalist design. What is called brutalist design.
Right.
But it's designed so perfectly to function so well. Like, how to use Wikipedia instantly. How to navigate in between different articles and how it all works really well. So, what are some of the things you tell people who say, I'm not a designer, I don't know how to design? Part of that is just understanding that you're already designing stuff if you're developing stuff. But what are some of the pointers that you give to those people?
Okay. I would say, well, by the way, I think that Wikipedia is like that, not randomly. So
sure.
Maybe it's ugly, but it works. So it means that it is designed. If something is ugly, but it works and it works well, then it means that it is designed.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that was my point exactly.
Yeah, so exactly.
But yeah, so I'm with you.
The difficult thing is that people who do something similar, but then they're like, oh well, it's like Wikipedia. Then you find out that actually probably it isn't, because you are ignoring, because you are not taking into consideration a series of visual needs that maybe your ugly thing that works doesn't satisfy. This is a really good thing to bring up, because there are so many sales pages, specifically landing pages and sales pages, that look horrible but sell. Mm-hmm. So people say, well, why should I change that? Because it sells. My point being that, how do you know that it wouldn't sell a hell of a lot more if it was well designed? Because look, it's so difficult because what happens normally if you want if you do the Wikipedia style but don't know how to do it, is that you're probably going to have chunks of text that are too long, too wide, too long, too tiny, without any a logical highlight. Because really, design is, as Matt was saying, it's just knowing where to break the text so that you capture the attention, you get people where you want them. And so interestingly, and then also let's not forget that design is also things such as trust. If it looks bad and it functions but it doesn't look great, then it doesn't inspire me with a hell of a lot of confidence in your brand, because it means that it does, even though even people who know nothing about design, they will tell that difference. Then also the other thing is that I've forgotten what was the next thing that I was about to say, but there are my main point. So the pointers would be to educate yourself. There are ways, and it doesn't, you don't need to get a degree out. I mean, the thing is, something that has been happening especially with CMSs like WordPress, that allow designers like us to, even though I've learned some coding, definitely. I don't think you can be a good web designer if you don't at least understand a little bit. I just don't think you can. But it works the other way around as well. There's so many developers who are not designers and yet design websites on a daily basis. And that's why I started Design for Geeks, because that's what they need. They need a little bit of education, and you don't need to get a design degree. I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to diss design degrees. They are essential, and you can't learn to be a designer in a month. But however, there is so much that you can learn to make your websites and your web pages a damn sight better, and to improve the experience of the people that use them just by educating yourself a little bit. Mm-hmm. So if I may, there's a Design for Geeks Facebook group that just join. If you're not in it yet, join, because that's what we do in there. And I also, yes, I do courses specifically tailored to bridge that gap. And they're also really useful for designers for print who haven't made, because it's always from a web perspective, because that's what's fascinated me, how different my way of thinking is since I moved to the web. So educate yourself is the pointer that I would give. And interestingly, I'm also doing for Mike Killen, don't know if you know him, Mike Killen of Sell Your Service, of we're going to do a split testing of some sales pages that he has that perform really, really well. And we're going to do split testing with one with a design treatment as opposed to the ones without. I haven't had time to do that yet, but I can't wait to do it.
So you're writing a case study along with that, so you can share it with all of us, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
good.
If it fails, I will be very disappointed. But I doubt it, because I'm just going to make it easier for people to actually use the page. That's what it is. So it can't fail to then lead to better conversions, because you're just making your user's job easier, basically, or more pleasant or more entertaining. But basically, that's what it's about, making it easier.
Yeah, and you kind of talked about getting having an art degree and stuff. I didn't go to school for art. I sat behind somebody for a couple of years who also didn't go to school for art, and I learned a lot from her, and she was gracious and gave me a lot of her time to kind of teach me. But I think one of the biggest differences, and one of the regrets I have for not going to any kind of art school is watching the videos with now his name just left me, the dude from the future, Chris Do. So, he's able to articulate things about design really, really well, because he understands all the words and how to describe all those things. And I'm really terrible at that. So I think that's one thing that you definitely get out of it. You're able to communicate things so much better when you have that understanding of them. One thing, I've told this to several people before, that we're trying to learn how to design in the sense of style thing is to find a website or just a page of a website that you really like. And you might not know exactly why you like it. You just like it. Open up WordPress and try to make that site again. Because what you'll learn is most of the time, it's not the big things that make a difference. It's the really subtle things. And you realize, oh my gosh, now that I actually get out and measure this, this one little column has, 60 pixels of padding all the way around it. And I usually only do 10, so you realize, oh, well, all that negative space actually is what makes this design really good. So having to go through and try to figure out all the steps people took to make it look like that is helpful, in your own development.
Absolutely. Yes, I completely agree. Because also I always do that. Like there's when I have to design something, I always go and look at what other people have done, because I immediately think that my one is not going to be as good as other people's, or, especially because most of us, a lot of us are one-man bands. We hire other people out when we need someone, but this is such a typical professional situation. Right now, I can tell we're all in our, I'm in my studio, we're in our homes. And so it's a completely different way of working. So there's no immediate comparison or feedback or asking a colleague to come and say, what do you think of this? Which I miss a bit. So
that's why we have the admin bar. You can do that here.
Exactly. Well, thank God thank God for Facebook and all of that as well. So I look at what people do always, because someone is bound to have solved that problem before or a similar one, and you can get inspiration from that. And that's also, conversely, that's also why themes don't really work. And I don't think, thank God for GeneratePress and Astra and Beaver Builder, because I only use them as a base, and I only ever really design. Maybe I use templates as a base, and I always change it completely, because your client's problem is not the same problem as the theme. It's just is something completely different. And however tiny you are, I don't care. You need to ask your client what their problem, what their user's problem is, and it's not going to be solvable by a theme, basically.
Yeah. No, having that framework is important, and then style it all on your own. Go ahead, Matt.
All of my clients have a private, I'm the only one that has access to it, but I have a private Pinterest board for literally every single one of my clients. As soon as somebody signs a contract, it starts, and I start just throwing things in there that might work, might not. Like, it fits their brand, it fits their aesthetic, whatever, it
solves a problem,
right? Like whatever I might need down the road.
You show it to them.
What's that?
You show it to them, or is it just private to you?
Just for me. It's just it's basically inspiration, and like it's kind of like a mood board for me, for the client. And it works.
Interesting.
Works well. I think there's a book called like Steal Like an Artist, and
oh God, yeah, of course.
It's true.
Everybody said it. It's quotes from which one is it? Good artists borrow, great artists steal, something like that.
Yeah, I forget who said that, but it's true.
Yeah, someone said that. Yes, someone did, obviously, but I can't remember who. Yeah.
Well, I know we're definitely going to have you back on and talk more details about some of the styling and stuff too, because I think that's important to know. But I hope people watching or listening to this it made them think a little bit about, if they didn't consider themselves a designer, but they are building websites from scratch.
You're a designer.
You're a designer. You're definitely a designer.
Absolutely.
I kind of think of it in the same way. I love to watch that show, or used to, the How It's Made show. And they would tell you about all these like really weird things, but tell you exactly how they were made. And, all those things, those engineering processes and stuff, all that's design. And I think that's why I was drawn to those shows, because I'm going, oh, so they make this thing to go over here and do this and do that. And all that's design too. So I think there's a big, broad definition of what design is. And hopefully some of these conversations, and we can have more conversations in the group too, open your mind to it a little bit. So I do have some things I want to get to before we get out of here. We're getting close. First of all, the guys over at WP Builds got quite the nice little interview coming out this week. I know Nathan was saying a few days ago he was about to do something big, or he was nervous about something. So he actually interviewed Matt Mullenweg, I guess a couple days ago, and that is going to come out on their podcast on Thursday. It'll be in the morning here in the States, and I think in the afternoon there in the UK. But he played a couple little just sound bites from it, and they're talking about all things Gutenberg, and I'm sure Nathan gave him some hard-hitting questions. So they do have where you can sign up to get notified when it comes out if you go to wpbuilds.com/Matt. So you can definitely check that out. I'm excited about that, and I'm really happy for those guys to land him on their 101st episode.
I feel really honored to have been on the same podcast.
I know. It's awesome.
Very exciting.
Secondly, we've had several people. In fact, Piccia asked us when we got on this call earlier how we set up OBS to do these live streams. So Matt actually took some time this morning and did kind of like a baseline video of, you know, the buttons you need to press and what you need to do to get the setup similar to what we have. So OBS is huge, and you could do, you know, an entire, you know, 10-hour course on how to do everything. This is more kind of showing you how we set this up and how we create the slide for the background and import all the video and audio and all that. It's real simple to do. I think the video is 5 or 10 minutes long, but for all of those who were asking about that, definitely check that out. Next week, we've been doing shows every Tuesday, and next week we are going to take our first break from doing a regularly scheduled show because Matt is actually flying down to Texas on Friday of this week so we can attend WordCamp together here in Dallas. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're excited. We're excited about that. We're going to hang out, and I'm sure we'll be doing some live streams and stuff just kind of throughout the weekend. We want to do some stuff from actually at WordCamp as much as we can. So
yeah, I've actually got a 360-degree camera too. So definitely keep your eyes posted because when we go live, you'll have the whole view of what we're looking at.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. So I think that's all of the things I needed to promote, but I want to give you some time, Piccia, to talk about what all you're doing, where people can find you, how they can connect, and all that good stuff. So throw it all on us.
Thank you. So first of all, the Design for Geeks group on Facebook. It's really, really such a nice bunch of geeks there that talk about design, and I really would love to see you in there. Then also I was talking about design thinking. Well, I do webinars, courses, and I've been doing many WordCamps and other conferences as well. I've also done other CMSs this year. And one of them is, if you're interested in design thinking, there's a webinar. If you go to designforgeeks.com, there's a course there that also has a few free lessons, and the design thinking one is one of them. And also, yes, and in fact, next, not this weekend, the following one, I'll be in Granada, at work in Granada, giving a talk on design thinking. And unfortunately, I should have been in Orlando this weekend. WordCamp for Orlando, but I can't be anyway. Never mind. So yes, those are the main ways. Also, I have, if you are interested in the subject, there will be a Black Friday sale at Design for Geeks. So sign up. There's the blog posts have freebies that will download, that will,
lead magnets.
My list. Yeah. Sorry, thank you. Yes, I just got a bit. Or you can also sign up to a free typography course that's coming up soon, and that will also put you, so you will be up to date with what's happening. But there's the Black Friday sale that's coming up in Design for Geeks. So if these things are interesting to you, if you are a developer that would like to get educated, then you should sign up and keep in touch with Design for Geeks.
Awesome. Well, yes, I definitely encourage everyone to do this. And thank you so much for joining us. As soon as me and you talked and you agreed to come on, I called Matt and I'm like, okay, what all do we need to talk about? And I thought it was going to be like a quick 5 or 10 minute conversation between us. And we ended up talking like 40 minutes, and we've both been so excited about this since. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, it's such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, Matt, you got anything else to add?
No, I don't think so. There's a short PS that I think Kyle and I will talk about once the show ends, but if you look down in the comments towards the end of this video, Toddy Jones brings up a good point saying that clients don't always know what their problems are. I think
Yeah,
that's an awesome
very true.
topic to discuss in a future episode. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Todd.
Maybe we should get Todd back on there to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I like the way you ran Todd and E into one thing, so he's just Toddy.
He
I
is
like
Toddy.
that. I
Good
think
old Toddy.
He's Hottie Toddy from now on. Awesome. All right. Well, you guys have a great day, and I appreciate everyone hanging around. We will talk to you on the other side. Bye.
Thank you so much.